Hey you guys, it's Aaron Hilliard here from Mushroom Wonderland, and it's late summer and we've had a couple of showers, which is making some mushrooms grow. So I want to take you in the woods and discover and identify all the mushrooms that I come across. So come with me on this episode of Mushroom Wonderland in late summer 2025. Let's go.
Welcome to Mushroom Wonderland.
Beautiful hedgehog mushrooms. So these are in the genus Hydnum, and these ones are edible. When they have these teeth underneath here, that is a sign that that's a good edible mushroom, especially with a cap and stem like that. All of the mushrooms in Hydnum are choice edible mushrooms, and these are beautiful. Did not expect to see these in late summer anywhere besides the coast. But hedgehog mushrooms are amazing, and these ones are not the big spreaders that you get out on the coast. These are the more delicate kind of montane or inland species fruiting here at the end of summer. Inland, coastal, you can find hedgehogs growing all day long, but these are thick little baddies. I'm totally going to collect these and get them sequenced, but did not expect to. I've never seen these in this area of the woods, but look how cool. These are in the Cantharellus, so related to chanterelle mushrooms, but a totally different spore dispersal mechanism, and that's going to be those little teeth under there. So out near the coast, growing with spruce mainly, is going to be the big spreaders, the big hedgehogs that get huge. But here inland and in the mountains, you often find these smaller species. And Noah Siegel once told me he doesn't even try to put a name on the Hydnum in Washington anymore because they're so morphologically variable and a lot of them look so much the same. But regardless, a choice edible mushroom, but these ones are just going to be studied. Mycorrhizal mushrooms that grow with the trees here. Hedgehogs are one of the best edible mushrooms that there are, in my opinion. And look at this beautiful fruiting body. This is just absolutely pristine. I would not even want to pick this. Just look how gorgeous that is. And look at the shades of coloration. What an amazing looking mushroom. This one is so moist and so fresh. Probably just a few days old, and I can see several more fruiting bodies right down here on this really ancient hemlock log. They always growing on hemlock. What a beautiful reishi. So Ganoderma oregonense, the northwest reishi. This is just a chunky formation of it. Really nice soft white pore surface here. Some people want to eat that white surface. I don't know. I've tried it. Just didn't taste like much to me. But it was edible, I guess. I don't know. I'm not going to pick this one though because it is just too pretty. Doing its thing here in the woods. I love it. But I do see one down there that is a little bit covered in its own spores and stuff, and I might grab that one. And this one over here, really good for making hot cocoa, and you know, medicinal, used by the Chinese for ages. The Reishi Lingzi Ganoderma oregonense. I don't know how I just made that rhyme, but that was kind of cool. These are definitely one of the late summer mushrooms that you can find growing in the woods, especially ancient hemlock or old growth hemlock woods. The dead logs will often have Ganoderma oregonense, not necessarily rare, but always startling when you see how beautiful this is. Some people call it the varnished conch. I like the name the candy corn conch, you can see why. And or the lacquered conch, the lacquered reishi. What a cool mushroom. So, gonna collect a couple for this fall. Wow, you guys, check this out on this super well decayed log. This is Laetiporus conifericola, or the chicken of the woods, that grows on conifer wood. Look how old and decayed this log is. I mean, this thing is still finding some food in here to eat, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a freshly fallen log. This is a very old log, and this is a very fresh specimen of the chicken of the woods. And you can see this from quite a ways away. It's a really bright mushroom, just stands out against the background. How beautiful. Chicken of the woods is a lot of people's favorite mushroom to eat, and it's unmistakable. It's really big, it's really bright, and it's always growing on wood, and it has pores underneath rather than gills. So easy to identify, no lookalikes really for this one, and a beautiful mushroom. Very mature, it's dropping millions of spores. It's very moist, and it's deriving its moisture from this old log. that soaks up water. So in the middle of summer when the ground is dry and crunchy, you can still find mushrooms growing on wood, and chicken of the woods is a great one to find in the summertime. What a pretty mushroom. Look what we came across out here in very late summer. This is Pacific golden chanterelles. You can see the gills under there, so really young fruiting. Don't worry, plucking them doesn't hurt the mycelium. And these are young though. I'm just gonna leave the rest of them behind. But in order to ID a mushroom, you have to pick it and look underneath. And there you can see the beginning of those decurrent gills. And I've actually taken small specimens like this and put them in the microscope to find out that they are producing spores even at this age. So if you're worried about the proliferation of the species in the forest, don't worry, they're dropping spores even when they're just tiny like this. And these are just tough little nuggets, little butter sponges, as I call them sometimes. These are amazing little chanterelles, and look, they're coming up all over out here. This most recent rain has little flushes of chanterelles starting to pop up in the woods here. And oftentimes, you know, if we have a wave of humidity, these little mushrooms will just get a green mold on them. So I say if you find them, you know, don't be shy about harvesting them. You can go with your intuition or your heart, but don't worry too much about the nature. It's fine. The next heavy soaking rain, there's going to be a huge fruiting of chanterelles all over in here. So, you know, growing with Douglas fir, western hemlock, here underneath this Vaccinium ovatum, or these evergreen huckleberry, I find tons of chanterelles, always growing right out of the ground, never off rotting wood, decurrent gills, and they never have worms in them here in the Pacific Northwest. Chanterelles east of the Rockies are notorious for getting wormy, but something about these ones here in the Northwest just do not attract the bugs, which is nice. They could be growing out here for weeks, sometimes months, you know, and they can get quite large, but without the water from a lot of heavy rain, they're going to just remain tough and small like this. So it's a beautiful example. This one is just a pale version of Cantharellus formosus, or the Pacific golden chanterelle, and there's white chanterelles that can look an awful lot like this, and when they get a little bit bruised, they'll turn bright orange or a rusty color like that. But a great edible mushroom for most. So if you're new to eating chanterelles, just eat a few at first and see how your stomach reacts. But happy to see those coming up in late summer. Gonna roll right into fall with a bunch of chanterelles growing, so very cool. That's kind of interesting. Right here on the side of the trail, I see some white color popping out of the moss here. Let me use my handy knife, get underneath here, and check that out. White chanterelles. See the gills under there? Decurrent gills. This one, Cantharellus subalbidus, and it's coming out. And in my neck of the woods, they seem to come out first. They don't seem to mind the dryness as much as the goldens. I mean, we did have a fruiting of golden chanterelles earlier in the summer, but as far as the fall species go, these white chanterelles come up first in my neck of the woods. They tend to be a little bit dirtier. They require a little more cleaning, but these are stout and fresh and young, so nice to see that. Chanterelles are, you know, arguably the most popular wild edible mushroom. Everybody eats chanterelles in the fall. So the white chanterelle, some people even say that they like it better. And it actually kind of stains or bruises an orange color. So sometimes by the time you get a bunch of these white ones home and they've bumped against each other in the basket or the bag, they will be all kind of rusty colored and showing a little bit more orange. These are quite white right here in the forest. So growing mycorrhizal with the trees here. There's a Douglas fir right there. And every year I see this little patch comes up, but it's my indicator patch to show me that the white chanterelles are out. So how cool is that? Cantharellus subalbidus. Keep your eyes out for white chanterelles. I know I will. These beautiful mushrooms right here make it into a lot of my videos, and these are the Fomitopsis mounceae. This one's just like hard as wood. It's a conch that grows on the side of trees and stumps and snags, you know, typically on dead wood. This is a decayer, so eating the inside of this log. It's inedible. Like I said, it's super hard. Some people believe that they're medicinal. Me, I just tend to leave them alone because they're doing a great job on the ecology of the forest, but Fomitopsis panicola is what they were called for a really long time, and now we have a tendency to just call them Fomitopsis mounceae. That's named after a female mycologist from Canada, and discovered this was a distinct species in North America, so got its own name. So really cool. Red-belted conch, or Fomitopsis mounceae. Look at this. This is what happens to be an Agarikon growing here on this old log that's laying down. I discovered this several years ago, and I come back to check on it, and it continues to get new growth. This one, Fomitopsis officinalis, and it looks like there's a couple of other fruiting bodies that are starting down here, and these actually have been collected by Paul Stamets and his team at Fungi Perfecti and put into their culture library, so the genetics of this particular Agarikon can live on forever. I thought that was a pretty neat find, and yeah, I was stoked to be at Telluride and see his keynote talk, and the picture of this exact mushroom came up on the screen as one of his collections, and it's still doing well after they did the core sample. So how cool is that? The Agarikon Larsifomus officinalis, or Fomitopsis officinalis, really incredible and long-living mushroom. So this mushroom growing right here on the end of this log is called Pycnoporellus fulgens, and it's an orange polypore, and it's the only mushroom I could think of that could possibly be confused for chicken of the woods, but this one's non-toxic, so even if you did eat it, it's not going to hurt you. But usually it only grows in 1, 2, maybe 3 different little fruiting bodies like this, where chicken of the woods is usually much larger and more substantial and fruits on a good portion of a big log. So, you know, if you're just seeing a very small fruiting like this, it's probably Pycnoporellus, and it's got a dry texture. It kind of crumbles apart, and it has like little teeth underneath here. Its pores are more like teeth. This is actually a really soft one because it's young, but older ones will be more dry and kind of crumbly. But again, non-toxic. This is the only look-alike that chicken of the woods has growing around here in Washington anyways. I'm next to where this little stream came down, and there's a lot of moisture right in here. And look at this bizarre looking mushroom. It's coming out of the ground right here, kind of near the stream. A purple stipe, and this kind of material, this floccose material on the stipe right there, and then just the tan cap. So we're gonna gently excavate this from the base and see if we can get a better idea as to the identity of this. And I'm gonna get way under there so I can get the entire stipe base and everything. Look at that, purple gills. How cool is that? That's a beautiful mushroom. Especially to find out here in the end of summer when it's really hot and dry still. You can look in these little seeps, these areas where the water tributaries come down. And this is often where you can find mushrooms. So look at this cool purple mushroom. And I might think like one of the purple Lacaria Amethysto occidentalis, but that cap color is way different. This one is clearly a Cortinarius. And the way that I can really tell is when I look at this material right here, spores have fallen out of the cap and left this sort of orange color on that material. These are actually the spores that have fallen out from there. So a beautiful Cortinarius, a purple one, and I'm not sure exactly the species, but I want to take this home and learn about it and get it DNA sequenced and stuff. So really cool to find a beautiful purple cort in you know, the end of summer here. Usually I find Cortinarius in the fall here in Washington, but sometimes you'll find an early one like this. How pretty. Wow, check out this late summer mushroom here fruiting at the base of some big Douglas fir trees. This one, the Phaeolus schweinitzii, or the dyers polypore. It's like a tree conch, but it's coming right out of the ground, and it has little tiny teeth underneath. And this thing fluoresces pretty bright in a UV light. Inedible because it's just kind of woody, but it's non-toxic, wouldn't hurt you. But if you put this in a pot of water with some silk or wool, it'll dye the fabric. Beautiful shades of gold, yellow, orange, brown, depending on what kind of mordant you use. And so the Phaeolus schweinitzii, a sign of butt rot. So this root right here of this young Douglas fir is probably infected with the Phaeolus. So If you see these growing in your yard at the base of a living tree, it could be a sign that the tree is on the way out, because it can act parasitic, also saprobic, so it can eat just decaying logs, and it could take years before it deteriorates it enough to kill the tree, but it eventually will happen. This is using the resources of its host to the host's detriment, which is basically the definition of parasitism. So the Phaeolus schweinitzii, beautiful mushroom, useful one in the dyer's pot, and you know, kind of tells a story of what's going on here in the forest. Here in late summer, the dyer's Polypore. Cool how these new hemlocks will use these stumps as a nursing stump, I guess, and grow their roots right over the top of old stumps. Really common here. And then at the base of some of these old stumps, you'll find these, which are a summer fruiting mushroom, late summer. And this one, the Tapenilla atrotomentosa. I know it's a big word. We could just call it the velvet foot or the velvet footed pax. And this is a bitter mushroom, non-toxic, but inedible. People just don't eat it. And this one's really kind of rooted down in there. Let me see if I can get this one. And you can see it's got a powdery kind of green mold growing on it. So this thing is on its way out. But look at that. And there is the velvet foot. So the velvet footed pax, they used to call this a Paxillus. Now it's in Tapenilla, its own genus. And these are great dyers mushrooms. So throw this in a pot of boiling water with some wool or silk, and it will dye it brilliant colors. So how cool is that? And even though it's moldy, I mean, even if it was an edible mushroom, and it doesn't matter that it's getting a little green mold on it, this would still be a good dyer's mushroom. And the pigments in these kind of mushrooms adhere to the proteins in the fabric. So it's got to be a protein-based fabric, animal made, like wool or silk, maybe alpaca or something like that. So how cool. The Tapenilla atrotomentosa, these are super mushroomy smelling, really mushroomy, and always growing off of dead wood like that. And look at that velvet foot, unmistakable dark velvety foot. This one's getting a little green mold on it, but a good example of the Tapenilla atrotomentosa, or the velvet footed pax. Wow, look at all of these huckleberries. So this is our evergreen, they call it the black huckleberry, but Vaccinium ovatum, and this is an evergreen shrub that's here in the Pacific. Camera does not like focusing on these little guys. This one, Hygrocybe Cantharellus. So the Chanterelle Hygrocybe, the Chanterelle Waxcap. How cool. And they usually just grow individually, in my experience, whenever I find them. It's usually just like one, kind of chilling alone. But look at that, decurrent gills, just like Cantharellus. What a beautiful little wax cap. So I love seeing these in the late summer. Often growing in little boggy areas, little swampy areas, or streams coming down the hills. Wax caps are just some of the most photogenic of all the mushrooms, I think, and they're just delicate and beautiful. So a really cool, kind of rare Hygrocybe that can be found late summer here in western Washington. Look at the striate cap like that. And this guy kind of has that decurrent look like a chanterelle. I'm always excited to find this mushroom. Ooh, look at this pretty mushroom growing at the base of this tree. And this one growing alone out of the wood. And I can see from the coloration on that cap that this one reminds me a bit of a deer hide. And I think that's why it gets its name, the deer mushroom. This one, Pluteus cervinus. And it's so pretty and young and all living alone. I'm just going to leave it there. I don't want to pick it. I'll put some pictures up of the... I'll put up some pictures of the Pluteus, but these guys are beautiful wood rotters, and they make a really nice medium to large size mushroom. And they are edible, although forgettable. These taste really bad even when they're cooked. They taste kind of like raw potatoes, which I think is kind of a weird thing, but a survival food and a beautiful one, and they're doing a good job decaying the wood out here. So there's Pluteus cervinus, or the deer mushroom. Check these mushrooms out right here. If I pick one of these little mushrooms off of this log, watch what happens here at the base. It starts bleeding. This one Mycena hematopus, or the bleeding bonnet. Crazy. You could cut the cap with a knife and it'll bleed like crazy. These ones are very pale, but man, that is a lot of blood coming out of these. It's not actually blood, but what a weird characteristic of a mushroom. So the Mycena, the bleeding bonnet, there's a few different species that do this. It's kind of a species complex of bleeding bonnets. It's bleeding in my hand. Look at that. And inedible, but probably non-toxic. And they're always growing on wood like this. How cool is that? The bleeding bonnet, or Mycena hematopus. There's quite a few mushrooms starting to come out now that it's the end of summer. It's starting to cool down. A couple showers have been coming through, so that's really helpful. Hoping for more rain. This fall is going to be amazing, and it's September already. It's the burr months. September, October, November, December. These are the best months for mushrooming, are the burr months. So we're here, everybody. So get your baskets out. You could come check out my mycology courses at Olympic College if you're in the area. That's Bremerton, Washington. And I'll put a link down here in the description on how to access the website for Olympic College. And you could sign up, and it's a 3-part class. Really, really cool. I'm also going to be speaking at a bunch of different fungal events this fall. The Quinault Rainforest Mushroom Festival, the Gifford Pinchot Mushroom Festival, the Olympic Peninsula Fungi Festival, the Wild Rivers Fungi Festival, the Bremerton KPMS Annual Mushroom Show. So I'm going to be all over the place, excited for all of that. And if you want to see exclusive content and stuff about hallucinogenics and things like that, you could go to my Patreon and get a membership over there. And it also helps support me in what I'm doing and giving out all this education and doing all the work I'm doing to make these videos entertaining and valuable. So thanks for joining this episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Much love. Peace out.